on the Streets of Springfield is the 19th episode of the 32nd season of The Simpsons. This is directed by Matthew Nastuk, and I thought it was a pretty good episode with some pretty decent messages. Lisa becomes obsessed with the music of a musician from the 80s called Quilloughby, who's voiced by Benedict Cumberbatch, and she begins to hallucinate him quite peculiarly. And he helps her out with some things, this hallucination version of Quilloughby. And then Lisa starts to change, and she starts to dress differently, behave differently. And it's quite fascinating to see this side of Lisa. And I rather enjoyed it. It's a glimpse into what teenage Lisa might become. But I thought it was an interesting enough story, and there are some important messages, which I'll discuss in a moment with a spoiler warning, as I'll discuss kind of what happened at the end. But I thought it was pretty decent. It's a bit peculiar. It's definitely one of those episodes that I think will not be for everybody. I think somebody will either love it or hate it. Some people will think it's okay, but generally I think it's one that will divide people. But I didn't mind it. We also have a subplot with Homer getting a truck, and it's fine. It's not the most interesting narrative. I think they could have done more with it. It does kind of serve a purpose in the episode, but generally it was more there just as initially as a device for Lisa to discover this music. I won't say exactly how it happens, but it makes sense. And then it's a little bit of filler. It's absolutely fine. But for me, the main interest was with this character of Quilloughby and how he influenced Lisa. And one could say, of course, that that's just representing how music can influence a person. They don't necessarily have to hallucinate the singers from 80s music to be influenced. And I guess that's an interesting point to consider. Not that it's a new revelation that music can influence people, but nevertheless, a little bit of food for thought there. But the main message is a little bit different, and I will explain what that is now with a spoiler warning as I discuss what happens at the end of the episode. And I have to say, it made me laugh. I really thought it was very well written. And in fact, Cumberbatch's performance through the whole thing is absolutely brilliant, and his lines are very well written and very well delivered. So at the end, as I said, spoilers, Lisa goes off to this festival with her hallucination of Quilloughby to see the real Quilloughby perform. And when he came out, and he's this older, middle-aged-ish, even older, plumper than he was in the 80s man who's clearly let himself go, it made me laugh so much because I wasn't expecting it. For some reason, I expected him to look like Lisa's hallucination, even though, of course, that was somebody from the 80s, so there's no way he would still look like that. So it just amused me so much. But then Lisa had to learn that actually, if she carries on behaving the way she is, which is being bitter about everything, being negative about everything, not letting other people have their opinions, that's the direction she's going to go in. And Lisa is usually somebody that the show uses to praise those qualities, for having a strong opinion, for being passionate about, for example, veganism. But in this episode, we get to see the point that actually you can go to the extreme and you can take things too far. And if you become bitter towards the world, you're going to end up like Quilloughby. It was a really funny way of getting the message across because I just hadn't expected it. If I'd thought about it for 2 seconds, I might have done. But it is a really important message, and I think that there are some good takeaways from this. I really enjoyed it. I'm not a fan of music, and while I liked Benedict Cumberbatch in this, I'm not, a huge follower of his work. So there's not any specific pull factor for me. And yet I really thoroughly enjoyed it. For me, it seemed to just have the full package. Really funny, very well animated, very well written, some important messages. Not a bad subplot. Homer's truck was fine. I didn't love it, but I didn't hate it. I have to say it's a pretty strong episode. Panic on the Streets of Springfield is, I think, one I would be very happy to watch again.